all just red, and I've never been I've never been able to understand like that line of like why there is this or why there is that. Um,
Yeah.
like why Michelle Obama got like shamed for baring her shoulders, while at the same time like other first women didn't get shamed for the same
Yeah.
thing. Like there's just, I mean, it's just so arbitrary. It's so horrible.
Well, I mean, that goes right back to the race thing. Like, every move that she made, especially as First Lady, was under so much more of a microscope because she was the first black First Lady. And, therefore, she both needed to play it super safe and do everything according to the book, but also be a little sexier because women of color are hypersexualized in our culture. And if she didn't live up to both of those simultaneously, she was always letting somebody down or opening herself up for criticism just by being. I made this list, and it is not an exhaustive list by any means, but it is a list of the lengths that people go to and have gone to historically and go to now in order to meet their culture's beauty standards. So
Ooh.
I just started writing things down as I thought of them. I don't have a whole lot of documentation, so there may be things that I've heard that are not entirely true. Just going to go for it anyway. So, one, in Victorian Europe, and I think long before that also, women would put drops of belladonna in their eyes to dilate their pupils so that their eyes would look shinier and sparklier in like indoor lighting. And that did have the desired effect of dilating your pupils, but it could also cause tons of health problems because belladonna is straight up poisonous. Not to mention the fact that when the pupils of your eyes are artificially dilated, like you can't see where you're going, like you can't focus your eyes. So women were literally like half blinding themselves to go to a ball where they would have to like be doing fancy footwork and like weaving their ways through like huge crowds of people just so that their eyes would look sparkly and they would be prettier to the men in the room. At the same time, in the same time period, people were using all sorts of toxic substances in makeup, like all kinds of like lead and like horrible chemicals were going into the makeup that was being used. At that point, they may not have known that like mercury and lead were poisonous to you, but people were definitely suffering the effects of that.
I mean, that reminds me of the radium girls who were putting like radium lace paint on their fingernails.
Oh my God. Yeah.
In their eyelashes,
Oh,
on their bodies
right.
so that they could glow when they go out at night.
God, that is horrifying.
I mean, and that is as soon as 1970.
Yeah.
Like the 1970s when that was happening.
And like there are still all kinds of toxic things that go into a lot of our beauty products, like nail polish and nail polish remover. That shit is toxic as hell. Like it should not go on your body, and yet we do it all the time. I do it because it's fun to have shiny, pretty nails, and then you feel like sexy when you do. But if you want to get that shit off, you're like coming into contact with things that are meant to hurt you.
No, I'm not. I chew it off.
Oh, that's probably good for you too.
Put it straight into my body. Yeah.
Cut out the middleman.
Yeah.
And the same with like tooth whitening. I mean, like bleaching your teeth. That's not good for your teeth. It's not good for the rest of your body. There are other methods of tooth whitening that aren't as toxic, but there's a long history of people trying to brighten their teeth with things that are extremely bad for their health. Conversely, and this is something that I wish I'd had a chance to look up, but I didn't, is that I have heard that basically like pre-Western contact, geisha in Japan would actually blacken their teeth. That was a beauty standard thing, which sounds like unthinkable to us today and just goes to show that, beauty standards are very culturally tied.
I'm thinking about all of the people that I personally know, but also all of the stories that I've read about women of color using bleach on their skin to try and make it paler.
That's a huge one, yeah.
And then, of course, there's the Chinese women with the foot binding.
Yeah, that was literally next on my list. Yes.
Okay.
That is
Talk
a
about
whole
that.
thing. Well, and again, I don't know enough about it to really have like a discourse on it, but for, quite a while, like foot binding, they literally broke little girls' feet and
Mm-hmm.
bound them so tightly that they couldn't grow. And when they did, when the bones went back into a shape, they were unable to walk on their feet. And this was considered pretty because tiny little demure feet were the rage at the time. And I mean, those women could never lead a more normal life. They could never go just do
No.
things for themselves.
Not only that, not only did it handicap them for the entire rest of their lives and was completely normalized for a lot of like people when World War One happened and people had to walk long distances to try and, save themselves from like getting bombed.
Yeah.
Uh, a lot of these women weren't able to make that
Oh my
distance. People
God.
died by the road.
Yeah.
And so this normalized beauty standard ended up being like really deadly for a lot of people. I mean, that's not even to mention the gangrene that people, like
Mm-hmm.
little girls died from.
Right.
Well, like with improperly like cleaned and wrapped feet, which
God.
all of the foot binding was improper. Like you shouldn't break people's bones in order to make them meet beauty standards. You
Especially
shouldn't.
like in children. Like it's one thing
Absolutely.
to, as an adult, make a decision about, some change to your appearance that you decide to make for your own reasons. Like I have no judgment for people who change their appearance because they want to. Girl, get it. But like, leave kids alone. Like
Oh yeah, totally.
do not do that shit to
Um,
children.
to make, people's parts more appealing to the other sex. Like there's
Hmm.
been a lot of like genital mutilation done and it's
Yes.
still being done today.
Yes.
Like for both men and women.
Hmm. Yeah. And I want to mention just quickly, I feel like this is probably more of a something to talk about in like a fashion oriented episode, but a lot of the things that have been prized as beauty standards for women involve doing things that are harmful to our bodies and often doing things that make us either become more helpless or appear more helpless. And that is, I mean, there's so much behind that, but it's very much based on, I think, the idea that I mentioned before of women being forced to be more virginal and more young looking and therefore more pure. There's, like, I think the infantilization aspect of that is like, oh, help, I couldn't possibly run away from a predator in these high heels. Oh, I can't carry the things that I need for my day out in public because I don't have any pockets. Like these
Yeah.
things that make us rely on other people or just be, less able to take care of ourselves are often things that are directly tied to us looking pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And foot
Uh,
binding is kind of like the one of the more extreme examples of that.
yeah. I like to draw the bottom eyelashes white and the top eyelashes black so I look like I'm scared to attract like the opposite sex.
God, that's. Oh, I was just gonna say it. I was just gonna say, oh my God, that's so dark. Ta-da! We have come full circle.
Yeah.
Some other things to consider: hair dye. Hair dye is toxic, man. Like, and again, I have dyed my hair. Dyeing your hair can be really fun, but like, it's not good for you. Hair removal from our bodies primarily and our faces as women.
Mm-hmm.
We're not supposed to have hair pretty much anywhere except on our heads and our eyelashes and our eyebrows. So we take hair off of most of our body, but then we buy fake hair to put on our eyelashes and our eyebrows and on our heads.
And just to follow this up, we're not going to talk a lot about hair in this episode because that is a thing that is
Yeah.
its very own episode is hair and beauty and sexuality.
Hair. I feel like we probably need to open that with like some song from the musical Hair. Just putting that out there.
Or Hairspray, which I know
True.
every song to that one
Yeah,
as well.
that's a fun one. Okay. Also, piercings. Like I just said, like don't force your beauty standards on your kids. Well, like most people who are assigned female at birth in America get their ears pierced like when they're very young.
Mm-hmm.
If not like infants. That
Yep,
happens.
I've seen infants with piercings.
Yeah.
Um, not just ears either.
Oh yeah?
But we do have to like look at like tribal,
Mm,
like traditional standards of beauty as well, like
right.
tattooing,
Mm-hmm.
piercings, and the cultural like aspects that go behind all of those as well. Like there's
Right.
definitely like different ways of looking at all of these different standards of beauty, but when it comes down to um, poking holes in children and finding their feet for the sake of like getting them like the best
The best husband.
husband or a partner for the future,
Right.
I think that that's where we should kind of really take a step back and look at
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of these modifications, can be made like ritually or, as part of, like you said, like a cultural.
like a coming of age ceremony
Hmm.
or
Yeah. And so, like, I guess I should say that, like, not all of these things I'm saying are like inherently bad. I'm not going to judge you if you have whitened your teeth. But it is just kind of putting into perspective, you know, how much we as human beings want to live up to our cultural beauty standards because we want to be pretty, and that's legit. That's fine. But, I think it's important to be a little bit aware of where a lot of these beauty standards come from, and so that we can make our own decisions about whether we want to conform to them or not. Some other quick examples are dieting, which is also a whole other episode.
yeah.
But I mean, like the lengths that people have gone to for the sake of their diets sometimes is pretty extreme. Tooth straightening, and
Just one tooth.
just this one tooth right here.
Just that tooth straightening.
Like the pain and discomfort that I went through in my teen years for the sake of tooth straightening, and then they just went right back to where they had been before all of the orthodontia. Um, Neck lengthening is a thing, particularly in Myanmar. There have been groups of people that did like forehead flattening as part of their cultural beauty standards. There's lip plates that people in Ethiopia put in to, extend their lower lips. That's like a very beautiful thing for those cultures. And then when it comes to lips, there's lip injections, which we do much more in the Western world. There's Botox, which can reduce the appearance of wrinkles and fine lines and can also reduce the size of your cheeks if you think your cheeks are too big. And that's before we even get into surgeries for the sake of beauty. So there's, taking fat out of your midsection or out of your butt and putting it into another part of your body, or taking fat from another part of your body and putting it into your butt. That's a whole thing. There's stomach stapling, which I am not saying is only a beauty thing. A lot of stomach stapling can be much more medical than just cosmetic. I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong. I think it's blepharoplasty, eyelid surgery, which is wildly popular in Korea and in other places in Asia, trying to get a more Western-looking eye configuration for your eyelids. Obviously, augmentation of the breast or the butt, altering facial features with nose jobs, etc., tummy tucks, boob lifts, and that is where I ran out of things that I could think of that people do to meet their beauty ideals.
Yeah. I fully plan on getting a boob job. Not just for beauty ideals, but because I had and nursed 6 kids, and I just really feel like that took its toll on my boobs. I did get my belly button pierced when I was younger, so that's another one, like belly button piercings, which I thought was super, super cute, but then I was pregnant, as a teenager, not long after that, and it stretched and left scar tissue all the way up to the top of, like, to my sternum.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have I have a belly button